Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Again, you have the uncommon pleasure of listening to the voice of Olusegun Remi Odunton at the Burning Mic podcast. Today, it is my intention to look into the reactions and opinions of people on the war of aggression launched against Iran. I should also mention that it is not enough for us to post opinions out there. Reactions to those opinions must also be addressed. So as a result of that, I have seen what the trajectory of reactions are, and that is what I'm going to be addressing. And one of such was seen on the page. It was seen on the wall of a follower of this platform, and his opinion encompasses the general body of reactions of anti-Iranian hawks. So that is these misconceptions is what we are going to be dedicating our time to looking into today. So I am just going to read excerpts out of the reaction or out of the opinion, and I'm going to be breaking it down. So number one, Mr. Oyerinde Aderemi, I believe, said something to the effect that it is funnier that some of our friends who are faulting the United States and Israel for attacking Iran are living in the West, enjoying the dividends of liberal democratic ideology, which are being threatened by the Iranian regime. Whatever he's talking about there, he's simply saying that residents of the West, people who live in the West that are supporting Iran, are enjoying the same the same dividends of liberal democratic ideology which the Iranian government or which the Iranian regime is threatening. I don't know whether it's implying that Iran is threatening U.S. democracy, but I want to assume that that is not what he is talking about. What he is talking about is the inside the democratic credentials of Iran within Iran. Well, if that is what he is talking about, I think our friend is guilty of what can be called cultural colonialism. By that, I mean that every society, every nation has a right to be a theocracy, to be a democracy, to be a monarchy. Of course, the United States, which is a democratic society in quotes, has a very good and robust relationship with other monarchies in the Gulf. And this is despite the fact that they do not practice or operate the same political system as the United States. And these monarchies in the past have done things that are extremely unjust or considered extremely unjust against their citizens, and America, the West, has turned a blind eye, as long as it did not or does not threaten their national interest. Most of you will remember the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, and you saw how the political establishments within the United States did not take that serious and how they did not stress about that. So as long as these monarchies are doing the bidding of the imperial West, everything they do is good. So that is that on that. And when you also talking about the liberal democratic ideology, which is not practiced within Iran, you should also be reminded that Iran was well on the way of, was practicing democracy, representative democracy at some point, and it still does. But the point I'm trying to make is, in the 70s, the United States terminated Iran's democratic experiments by organizing a coup that upended the prime ministership of Mohammad Mossadegh. And the original sin of Iran was that they had the guts to nationalize their God-given natural resource of oil for the benefit of Iranians. And this was their original sin. And I mean, we understand how the United States went around the world, how the CIA went all over the world and killed thousands, if not millions, of socialists and of communists. But in Iran's case, and several dozens of nations as well, you don't even have to be socialist to think of nationalizing your resources for the benefit of your citizens. So nationalizing Iran's oil was the original sin, and the CIA clamped down on it, and they removed Mohammad Mossadegh and imposed a brutal dictatorship of Reza Shah Pahlavi, a dictatorship that lasted well over half a century. So, I mean, the West, the same evangelists of liberal democratic ideology, turned the other eye as long as that Iranian dictatorship of the Shah was doing the bidding of the West. So the point is, I mean, every nation has a right to decide and choose what political system they will practice. And we have said repeatedly, without mincing words, that the Islamic Republic came into being not via a coup, but through a popular revolution backed by the mass of Iranians. And if the West, the United States and Britain had not killed their democratic experiments, well, there would be no Islamic Republic. There would be no revolution over there. So effectively, the West, the United States, fathered the Islamic Republic. Its actions against Iran's democratic experiments was the semen that fertilized the revolution that became the Islamic Republic. So you created this in the first place, because had you not interfered and launched a coup against the democracy, of course, there wouldn't have been an Islamic Republic. That is the point there. If also you want to talk about Western liberal democratic ideology, well, we can go there too. We can begin to look into how democratic Western societies still are. When you look at how the oligarchies, the billionaire oligarchs, have hijacked Western democracy, because, well, now it's democracy in the West is pretty much government of the billionaires. So the Western capitalist democracy has been hijacked by the capitalist class. It is no longer as democratic as most of you think. Even the Western media as well has become a branch and an arm of Western capitalist governments. They no longer practice independent journalism. So if you want to go there, we can begin to look critically into the democratic credentials of the West. So I am saying that Western capitalist democracies itself has fallen far from the original democracy we all know. It is no longer the government by, for, and of the ordinary people. Not anymore. And if you so believe in democracy as well, some of the various parts of democracy itself is liberty and sovereignty. So if you continue to disrespect the liberty of the Iranian states and the sovereignty by seeking to impose your political system on them, that is cultural imperialism. And Iranians are rightfully shaking that off as we speak. So the writer also goes on to say, no rationally sane person wants to see a radical, clerical, religiously ideological regime powerful enough to control nuclear weapons. You continue to say this and this and that, ignoring the fact that Iran is a signatory to the NPT, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And they have said repeatedly that they do not intend to acquire nuclear weapons, but that they have a right under international law, that they are guaranteed a right to a nuclear program for civilian use. And that is exactly what they are doing. But when you say, or when you demonize Iran as being radical, clerical, religiously ideological regime, do you ignorantly, innocently, or intentionally ignore the fact that the West is even more or equally radical in their belief, in their values? And this is what is propelling this cultural imperialism. Because if you want to also go there too, we can begin to say or talk about or analyze what manifest destiny means, and what God's own country means, and what God's chosen people also means. But you want to, abandon the ability to look at your own self in the mirror and talk objectively, but you want to ignore that and you want to demonize others. There is nothing more hypocritical, and the point and the truth is that the West is as fanatical, radical as Iran is. Yes, because Israel also has its own fanatical views too, right? And Israel is also looking at the territories, lands of surrounding states, neighbors, has given to it, granted to it by God. And the United States also have this belief in manifest destiny as well, that it has a God-given rights to lead the world. And anyone who challenges or threatens that rights is visited with fire, fury, and destruction. And this is a recipe for global instability. These fanatic ideas. So the Christian West is as guilty as what they are accusing the other side of. Because look, when you look at the National Security Strategy document as well, the United States believes that the resources within the Western Hemisphere belongs to it. So what can be less radical, fanatical, ideological than that? So all these points with which you demonize Iran with, you are equally guilty of them. And that is the truth. But you lack this ability to look inwards. Yes, we live here and we have imbibed the Western culture and lens of seeing the world. But the ultimate measure of an intellectual is an ability to look inwards and ability for self-criticism. And if you lack that, you do not worth your grain of salt as an intellectual. That is that and that. So they are not driven by ordinary political ambitions. They are motivated by the fantasy of fulfilling a divine mandate of global domination. I mean, you are accusing Iran of the same exact things that you do. Global domination. What you talking about? China, Russia, Iran, none of these nation states are seeking to dominate the world as much as the West does. As a matter of fact, it is the US who is seeking to surround them. And as we speak, it is only the US that has over 700 military bases around the world. That is to project not democracy, but to project power and to dominate. So it is a lie from the pit of hell for this writer to say that Iran has an ambition to dominate the world. So please stop. Okay? They do not reason like ordinary political actors. They are ideological theocrats who view power through a metaphysical lens. Well, we don't know what this guy is talking about when he said metaphysical lens. It sounds like garbage. It sounds like playing on words. But if he's talking about spirituality, people in the West also have their spirituality as well. But you are refusing to respect people. You are choosing to demonize them while you angelize yourself. That is the height of hypocrisy, and which everyone should beware of. And whenever a political authority is fused with the conviction that one is carrying out God's promise to rule the world, and such absolute religious certainty is combined with destructive military capability, the result would not be merely dangerous, it would be catastrophic for global stability. It is, in fact, apocalyptic. This is exactly what Donald Trump did few days after the war started. Right? He dressed himself up as Jesus Christ, and he saying that this war will lead to that it will lead to an apocalypse that will bring about the return of Jesus Christ. So he presented this war in Christian terms, which is wrong. And you are accusing Iran of the same exact thing that the West is doing. So this is the height of hypocrisy. And he said, and whenever a political authority is fused with the conviction that one is carrying out God's promise to rule the world, well, the United States mantra of manifest destiny is the same thing. And the motto of the United States is God's own country. And Israel also sees itself as God's chosen people as well. But you see how he has turned everything around to make the West look like the saints in all of this. So I'm just exposing the hypocrisy for you to see that this is garbage. So for those who argue that the war against Iran is morally wrong, they should know that sometimes morally questionable actions are justified. So he is finally admitting that the attack on Iran is morally unjustifiable, morally baseless. But he's talking about that these immoral actions is justified if they lead to a greater good or greater stability. So, you know, that is the entire thing that this writer is talking about. But one thing that he did not mention that Iran has been accused of as well is this gender apartheid. It's talking about women do not have enough rights, they're not allowed to do this and that and that and that. Well, but see, the point is, you can appreciate how beautiful your culture is, but you do not have the ability to access how beautiful other people's ways of lives are because you've not lived among them. But whether you've lived there or not, there is this tendency towards cultural bias. And that is what many of us are suffering from. Iran has a right to be conservative about their women. They don't want their women dressed half naked. They don't want them doing stuff. But of course, the West, as a global power, can worm their way into the hearts of the Iranian society, but not through the use of force. Because if you continue to use force and if you keep demonizing them, it stiffens their neck against your points. I mean, irrespective of all the rights you may say women enjoy in the West, you cannot also deny the amount of sexual violence perpetrated against women. And the Epstein files present a great revelation about the violence against not just grown women, but minors. So you want to downplay these vices in the West and just attack Iran because you want to, impose your ways of life on them. It's going to take time. Even some of the best friends of the West in the Gulf, Saudis, right? Women do not enjoy, expansive rights there. But the United States is, because of the diplomatic relationship that exists, these restrictions are gradually, disappearing. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some years. And even the United States, it's not been up to 100 years since women were granted the right to vote. So, but this society that has women scientists, you ignore the good parts. You want to talk about what their women wear? What's the business with that? Right? So we just have a duty to continue to destroy these illusions and hypocrisy wherever we find them. Thank you for your time. God bless you.